Thank you so much for joining me again. This is the Black Renegade Rising. I am simply a maven looking for my haven on the continent. This is a part 4 in a series on black bodies and life in America for melanated individuals. Not just men and women, but also black children. Today I will focus on the plight of black women in America. And again, the disparities that I will talk about or discuss are not the only issues facing melanated women in our society. 80% of black women's earnings are required for their families, meaning 80% of black women who do work, their families are dependent upon their income to suffice and to make ends meet. Even with the Affordable Care Act that was passed some years ago, 16.5% of all melanated women, African American women or black women in America, do not have health coverage. With that 16.5% mentioned, it is important to note that the elderly are in a separate category. So pretty much anyone under probably about 65 for melanated women do not have health insurance, even with the Affordable Care Act being passed roughly 11 years ago. So let that sink in for a minute because that should say something. Black women experience higher rates of poverty than any other group with the exception of First Nations women. And actually that rate of poverty for African American women is 23%. It's actually 23.1% compared to only 9.9% for white women. And black women are twice as likely to be incarcerated as white women. Let that sink in, and the younger you are, the higher the rate is. For 18 to 19-year-old African American women or black women in America, they are 4 times as likely to be incarcerated as white women in their same age group. 6.8% is the unemployment rate for black women in America versus 3.2% for white women. 23.2% of black women have bachelor's degrees or higher in America, and that is compared to 37% of white women and 53% of Asian women. And just in case I didn't mention it before, black women on average, we earn 61% of what a white man earns, and that also means that it takes us almost a year and a half just to earn the same amount as a white man in America. And those averages equal to $23,530. Let me say that again, said that wrong. So that equals out to being $23,653 is what a white man earns more per year than a black woman. $23,000 is a lot of money for most black families, let alone that is the difference, the discrepancy in what a black woman earns versus what a white man earns in America. And those earnings total up over a lifetime of working to almost $1 million in difference to weighing in at roughly $946,120,000 over a lifetime of employment. So a white man with the same education, number of years of work experience compared to that black woman with the same years of work experience, all things being equal, will earn $1 million more than she does in a lifetime. Occupational segregation is what happens to black women, unfortunately, in America, and that also means that it actually impacts or pretty much creates an additional barrier to career progress. The lack of intersectionality analysis, meaning when scientists, researchers decide not to look at black women and the intersection of race, black women and the intersection of sex, black women and the intersection of various other targeted areas, it actually means that the results are incomplete when it comes down to research. And therefore, scientists have no real clear idea of just how vast and how expensive and how ingrained the disparities really are, because they choose not to do the research. If I guess you don't do the research, it doesn't make the problem real. And Black women are 2 to maternal mortality. Let me say that again. Black women are 2 to 3 times as likely to die from maternal mortality rates in the process of giving birth or within a year afterwards. And that also includes, for those of you who are wondering what I'm talking about, is that Black women are in peril when giving birth and during the whole childbirthing process. From the point of conception to the point of actually giving birth, we are at a higher risk of death. And the crazy part is that most of the deaths are preventable. They are things that they simply choose to overlook in the medical profession because they feel like Black women are just complaining. Serena Williams, the tennis player, also unfortunately experienced this recently in the last few years when she gave birth. So if a tennis player with millions of dollars, name recognition, famous out the wazoo, would have problems and almost lose her life giving birth, then what chances does the average Black woman in America stand when they're complaining about complications or not feeling well after or during the childbirthing process or directly after? And Black women over 30 are 4 to 5 times as likely to die as their white counterparts in reference to mortality rates in childbirth and directly after. And if you have a college degree, you are actually 5.2 times as likely to die. Let me repeat that one more time. So if you're a Black woman in America who has a college degree, you are 5.2 times more likely than a white woman to die, and 3 times as likely as white women to die in the process of carrying a child, giving birth, or within that year after. Let that sink in. So the fact that we're educated, we're able to supposedly explain our symptoms and use standard English and use the correct diction and use the correct pronunciation and accents in the correct places and do all those things that you want us to do and speak plain so-called American English to you only gets us more death, because now you're pissed off that we're able to explain our symptoms in more detail, and as a result you ignore us even more. So let that sink in. And those again are just some of the facts about the disparities, like I mentioned before, on Black bodies in America. Like I've mentioned before, Black bodies are under attack from both threats, foreign and domestic. Anti-Blackness is everywhere, and unfortunately it just seems to be thriving and not going anywhere. Going back to the continent, or actually making your way to the continent, a Blaxit, Blackexit is really one of the best options you have as a Black individual living in America or most Western world countries, as you may get a chance to finally thrive and not be simply your race as you are here, and be pretty much have your life possibly taken a number of different ways, whether it's by the healthcare system that ignores the fact that you've got symptoms that you're complaining about. The healthcare system also thinks that Black people in general have tougher skin, and therefore we are able to tolerate higher pain levels. They tend to think we're drug addicts, so they try not to give us any medication, as well as they think we're complaining. They think we don't understand the symptoms we're actually having. The list goes on, as well as you're likely to be shot, you're likely to be murdered by the police or other authorities. The list just goes on. Your children are more likely to be brutalized at school, whether it's by a resource officer or by a teacher, or the list goes on. You know, even with a college degree, you're not likely to make enough money to take care of your family. Black people, when they do go to college, we have more debt. Why do we have more debt? That house that your parents may have bought or your grandparents may have bought is most likely in a Black neighborhood, and it did not appreciate at the same rate of your white counterparts. And what that means is your parents did not have that same luxury when it came down to sending you to college. They didn't have the same equity in their home or in their neighborhood, their car, or their business, and so on. And like now, even McDonald's franchisors, black McDonald's franchisors to be exact, are actually suing because McDonald's intentionally gave them or allowed them to purchase or franchise McDonald's restaurants in areas that would allow them less money. And what that means is simply McDonald's allowed these black franchisees to set up shop in places where they knew they would not make nearly as much as their white counterpart franchise owners. So let that sink in. So even if you've got the resources and the wealth, there's still ways that people are trying to take things away from us. Even when it's earned, they're still trying to take it away from us. Even if you're at the bottom, they're still trying to take it away from you. So there's a black tax on everything. And our lives are not considered precious, even though they actually are. So again, this is the Black Renegade Rising. I am simply a maven looking for my haven on the continent. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will be talking more in future episodes about black women and our health and the disparities within the black community, as well as outside the community, within America and other Western world countries, to be exact. So stay tuned, because we do have more planned. More planned. Stay tuned.